here's my keg, and it's empty. I've got to fill it back up with beer, but it's round about time that I give my keg a full cleaning. A spring cleaning, you might say. It's springtime. So that's what we're going to do. I often just sanitize the kegs without giving them a full cleaning, but you know, every once in a while you got to give them the full meal deal. This is a pin lock keg, and I don't know if you can see that it gets its name because here on the post you'll see this is the gas in. It has two pins like the bolts on Frankenstein's neck, and on the liquid out it has 1, 2, 3 pins like the bolts on Frankenstein's neck, and the fittings to go onto there have slots in them. You can see there's a slot there, so that goes down on there and twists to hold it in place, versus a ball lock fitting, which is more of a quick connect like you see on garden hoses and that sort of thing. The problem that I prefer pin lock kegs, because ball lock kegs you can actually get the gas onto the liquid, get them reversed. The diameters of the posts and the ball locks are very slightly different, but you can get the smaller one down onto the bigger one, and then it's hard as hell to get it back off again. It might take you days. Because of the 2-pin and 3-pin design of the pin locks, you don't have to worry about that. One thing that makes it a pain though is without the proper tool it's hard to get these posts off. Fortunately, I have such a tool. It's a 13/16 socket wrench, and you can see it's got 6 notches cut into it here. I actually have details on my website on exactly how to make one of these. I've made one before, and I've got details on the site. That would actually make an interesting video sometime. This goes down onto the posts, either one of them, and it helps us take those posts off. First I'm going to vent the keg. You see it had pressure in it, and I'm going to take the lid off, push down. Sometimes these things are really hard to push, and if you're pushing down with your thumb, this is when I learned the hard way. If you're pushing down with your thumb and that gives loose, and your thumb happens to be over this, even though that's not at all sharp, you can slice your thumb on that really good. Believe me, I've done it. So you can see there is, on the lid, there is this giant O-ring that comes off of there. This one is relatively new, I can tell by looking. It's one of the newer ones that I bought, so it certainly doesn't need replacing. It'll get cleaned. This part's still in good shape. I'm not too worried about that. That's easy enough to clean. We'll show you inside in a few minutes once I reposition the camera. Right now I am just going to take my socket wrench and I'm going to take off these posts. So I turn it the right way. It's regular righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. There we go. That one's loose. Now when you're doing this, you want to have an ice cream container to put the parts in, or a shorter one would be better. That's a bit superfluous. A yogurt container, that is. And if you're doing several of them at once, unless you are absolutely certain the parts are interchangeable between the two kegs, and you can tell that by model number, but sometimes it gets tricky. Unless you are absolutely certain, then have a different container for each keg. You can see now inside of here there is the pin, or the post, sorry. That's called your post poppet. The poppet. It's spring loaded. I guess you can see that. Spring loaded. It's got a little gasket at the top. That gasket at the top is, to the best of my knowledge, not replaceable. The spring will wear over a very long period of time, but for average homebrew use you'll get years and years out of one poppet without having to replace it. The feet sometimes will bend on these things. I've had the feet bend on them, and you take a pair of needle nose pliers and you can straighten them out very, very carefully with a set of needle nose pliers. Now this is my post that came off. This is the gas post. I can tell by the 3 pins on it, 1, 2, 3. It has a gasket that is replaceable, an O-ring actually, and I'm not going to take it off of there because it just doesn't seem to want to come off, which is fine. It's not worn in any way. You will check this, and if it seems to be worn or blistered or whatever, you might want to replace it. So I put those into my container, and I come aboard the liquid, or the gas, sorry, the 2 pin is the gas. That come off pretty easily, and just screw it out. Okay, that one wants to come out with the post. Sometimes the post, you can see there's this little post inlet. There's one here too that I haven't shown you yet. Sometimes it wants to come out with the post. Don't worry about it. I'll show you the post in a minute. So this basically is identical to the other one. Sometimes those poppets don't want to come out. Usually that just means they're really gummed up, and after a good soaking they will come out, but sometimes they really need some encouragement. You got to poke it through with something. My first several times doing this years ago when I first got kegs, I didn't take them out at all because I didn't think they came out. So that's going in there. You can see this is all gummed up. Even though that's my gas in, it's all gummed up with crap. I can feel it sticky. Maybe you can't see it all that well there, but I feel it's very sticky. That needs a good soaking in OxyClean. Now the posts, don't mix up your posts. You got to know which one is which. On these kegs, actually, I think you might be able to see somewhere they had in and out labeled on them, I thought. But if not, it's always a good idea to make your own label. So this is my gas post, so I'll just put a G here for gas, and right here I will put an L for liquid. On some kegs it doesn't matter, but it's good to have them the same in all your kegs. On some kegs, this is one of the ones that doesn't matter, because the other post I'll show you in a minute goes to the center of the keg. But in some kegs there's a dent in the bottom of the keg that accepts the bottom of the long post. And speaking of the long post, so short post, there's another, that's my gas post. You're technically not supposed to fill the keg beyond the bottom of this post. That's your fill level, but I do sometimes. So that has another washer on the bottom of it that needs to be cleaned, and if it gets ratty, replaced. They can get pretty ratty, and you can fix. Before I ever had a source for replacement parts, when I first started doing this, I did a lot of repair of these O-rings with plumber's tape. And that O-ring can get pretty ratty, and you can bundle up the plumber's tape on there, and you can do wonders with plumber's tape on these things. But now I do have a good source for them. So that's going in there. And now we are going to have a look at the long post. This post goes right to the bottom of the keg, and that sucks up the beer from the bottom. The pressure goes in here and forces the beer up from the bottom of the keg here. You can see this one is bent. It's supposed to be bent, and it goes towards the middle of the keg at the bottom. And that has another gasket at the top to seal everything up. I just want to make sure that one's nice and clean. I'm not going to be able to put that in my bucket, but I'll set it aside here. Same thing goes for those long posts. They are not necessarily interchangeable, so be careful with them. Make sure you keep track of which keg they go with. Now let me see, we want to look into that keg. I've got a wind-up flashlight here. We are going to look into that keg and let's see what it looks like. So you can see there's a bunch of grunge down there. That's mainly sludge from beer, from sediment from beer, yeast mainly. And I can tell by looking it's relatively fresh, and I know because I had beer in this keg just a couple of weeks ago. So that's fresh sediment. This is not going to require an extremely thorough cleaning. This keg, it will require an extremely thorough sanitizing, but we will get this stuff out of here in a moment. I'll show you how that's done.